excited that we have this event with Bill Reichert. Bill Reichert is a well-known entrepreneur and a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. I won't do an introduction of Bill. It will be done by my partners, Gary and Derek. But I will tell this. I met Bill at Stanford a couple of years ago, and he was a very inspiring person to meet with. So you will notice this in a couple of minutes. This event is organized together with GoGlobal community and GSD. I have founded this community with the mission to help entrepreneurs to get closer to the ecosystem of Silicon Valley, to meet such credible people like Bill, in order for you to get more knowledge, expertise, and probably sometimes resources to move your business forward on an international scale. Your job is to participate in the community, help each other, build a network, and basically that's it. It's free, but we need to help each other to grow it even more. We recently had many great speakers, and those were Medina Islam, a famous entrepreneur and actor in Hollywood, Gary Fowler, the CEO and founder of GSD, Derek Distenfield, and many more, like Bob Dorff, for example, a very well-known guy, person in the United States. More events to come, and the next speakers we're planning to have is Panda Dog founder, a good friend of mine, Mikida Mikado. They raised about $20 million recently, and their company is growing very well. They are considered among the best employers in the United States. But this guy started his company some years ago from Belarus, and he brought his team in the United States and scaled internationally. It's an amazing story, and he will help us understand how he did it and share some advice. David Young, he is a founder of Abi and Eva and many other companies, and well-known entrepreneur in Russia. He will talk together with Gary Fowler about growing a global corporation. And we will have and then the second part of Silicon Valley history with Evgeny Dukhovny, who started this event. The first part was yesterday, and it was very interesting, and we had amazing, incredible feedback from people. If you like our events, feel free to join the following ones. Just scan this barcode, and you will be taken to the list of the events we have, and it will be easy to join. For everyone who is joining our events, you have to be on the community. So on Telegram channel, find GoGlobal Russia in English, or scan this barcode, and that's it. You became a member of the community. If you need more than just help with some connections and advice, please contact me through GSD. We can take your business to the United States, help you grow it, and raise capital, and so on. One of the recent articles I posted on vc.ru with some advice for startups, what to do during the crisis, and so on. In the end of this article, I also added a link to the active investors who are currently investing with their direct contact details. It's a public list organized by entrepreneurs. So the rules during this webinar are simple. Ask your questions in the chat during our presentation. Please speak English only, and please keep muted yourself during the whole event. if you have noise, like I hear some noise right now, we can interrupt each other, and it will decrease the quality of the event. So please respect each other, and let's make this event amazing. I will introduce my partners. Bill Reichert, Gary Fowler is the founder of GSD. He is a well-known, successful entrepreneur in Russia and in the United States, who had not only like successful companies which started like he got investment for, but he also took some companies to IPO and many more. Derek Gistenfield is the co-founder of GSD. He is a successful entrepreneur who started many companies and has enormous expertise in growing companies. So I will pass the word to Gary Fowler to introduce Bill and Derek.
Yeah, so great. So Bill's been involved with us in Russia for quite some time. In fact, Bill, I was just thinking about it. I don't remember the first time we met, but it seems like forever when you started working with us at Skolkovo Startup Academy with Lawrence and myself, and then with BA. So it seems like a long time. Bill is the managing director of Garage Technology Ventures and co-founder. He's involved in many, many different things. Pegasus Tech Ventures. He works at Startup World Cup, Phoenix. I mean, on and on and on. He is a well-known figure in Silicon Valley and trusted figure, Stanford MBA, all-around good guy, and extremely, extremely connected. He's on the board of EVA. He's gives amazing advice, and I think that Bill is one of the hubs of knowledge for the Valley. So, Bill, we really appreciate you taking your time. My partner Derek is going to be doing the interviewing. Derek will tell you a little bit about himself, but he's got a robust background in tech, has had several exits, has raised money, and actually is currently in Moscow working with our startups in our portfolio. So with that, you want to get started, guys? Derek, Bill?
Yeah, I think we're ready.
Good.
Hey, Bill, thanks for joining us.
Hey,
we really appreciate it. So if I met you on an airplane, I said, tell me about yourself, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, well, it depends on how long the flight is, and you know, whether or not you're interrupting my other activities. So, but I'll take the question as it was intended. How do I introduce myself? So I think of myself as an entrepreneur and an investor here in Silicon Valley. I started out, you know, long ago here in Silicon Valley when I was a graduate student here at Stanford. I wound up starting a software company, and it was at the time it seemed pretty straightforward, you know, pretty normal thing to do. It was well before it was common for Stanford graduate students to start companies. But the company just took off. And then one day, all of a sudden, for a whole bunch of reasons that, if this is a really long flight, Derek, I'd tell you. But one day, it just crashed and burned and blew up. It exploded. And it was extraordinary. But the great thing about Silicon Valley is when you crash and burn, you just pick yourself up and you dust yourself off. And then you spin the story, you know, and then you go do it again. So I got a chance to go do it again. So I then went in, actually, it was a restart. A buddy and I were asked to see if this company could be saved. And so we went in and we took it public, became the largest educational software company in the United States. And it was like a spectacular success. And I thought, wow, I've totally got this entrepreneur thing down. And so I plowed a bunch of time and money into this unbelievably cool technology company. And we were gonna change the world. and we ran this company into a brick wall at 500 miles an hour. So I got a little humility, but I had a chance to do it again a couple of times, one of which then went public. And then I got together with Guy Kawasaki and a few other people, and we decided that there was an opportunity to innovate in the venture capital world. And that was the origin of Garage Technology Ventures. And the big idea behind Garage was to be the first venture capital firm that was designed for the benefit of entrepreneurs. Because our experience as entrepreneurs had been that the venture capital world was this sort of opaque old boys network. You had to know somebody, you had to play golf with somebody. I mean, it was not very entrepreneur friendly. And so we wanted to be the most entrepreneur friendly venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. And so that meant that we were going to do a lot of outreach. You know, Guy naturally writes books and gives speeches, and we created and created a curriculum for entrepreneurs and put together what is arguably actually originally in model. We spent a lot of time actually doing education development acceleration of entrepreneurs, and arguably we were the first accelerator in Silicon Valley. But over the years, as the market has changed in Silicon Valley, so have we. We have, sort of adapted to different trends in the Valley and to different evolutions. With the explosion accelerators and all of this seed money around the world, we decided to move up to sort of late seed. And then a couple of years ago, we affiliated with this global venture firm out of Japan called, which is now called Pegasus Tech Ventures. And so I am also a partner at Pegasus. Pegasus is a $1.5 billion growth stage venture fund, investing all over the world, but sort of the core is here in Silicon Valley. They set up their headquarters here in Silicon Valley, but also in Japan and East Asia and Southeast Asia and South Asia, and a little bit in Europe. We want to do more. We haven't done as much as I'd like, but so I get the chance to invest sort of over the place. One of the things that Pegasus did that was a nice extension of what we were doing at Garage is they created what is called the Startup World Cup. And God bless these guys, they decided to make it the biggest, richest venture competition on the planet. So last year we did regional competitions in 40 cities around the world. This year we were on track to do over 50, and then things got a little delayed. But we'll get back on track there. But the grand prize for the winner of the Startup World Cup is a $1 million grand prize that Pegasus invests in the winning company. Last year, the winning company was a software company out of Vietnam, and just amazing company. And actually, if we get to this, to talking about pitching, just a great story about how they won in the last minute in the pitch competition, and got the $1 million prize. So I'm now the representative for Pegasus on the board of this Vietnamese company. And it's amazing. I mean, Vietnam is an amazing place. So, but we could talk about the rest of the...
I want to get into pitching, but before the entrepreneur gets to pitch, they have to engage with a venture capitalist. I'm often always asked, like, how do you meet a venture capitalist? I know that you've created the most friendly VC firm, but there still is the act of, getting connected and getting the opportunity to rock the pitch.
Yeah. So there's some common wisdom here and some uncommon wisdom here that I'll share. First with the uncommon wisdom. So in the it used to be that I would tell entrepreneurs, it's never too early to talk to us. Because that was our shtick. We wanted to be open and accessible to entrepreneurs. The harsh reality of the world is that, there are, there's so many entrepreneurs and there's so many startup companies. And so there is a lot of inbound. There's a lot that we get reaching out as well. So, we're coming across 10, 15 sort of new companies a day that we have to filter through, right? And so it's just a practical reality that we have to be efficient about filtering out companies. So I used to, as I said, I used to say to entrepreneurs, it's never too early to introduce yourselves, to get, so to get to know us, for us to get to know you. But I realized that that's not true, that I shouldn't be telling entrepreneurs that. The first thing you have to do as an entrepreneur before you start going out and pitching for money from investors, the first thing you have to do is figure out what it is about your company that makes you stand out compared to everyone else. And what I tell entrepreneurs is that the reality of venture capital that I did not realize when I was an entrepreneur, the reality of venture capital is that investors do not invest with their brains. Believe it or not, investors do not invest with their brains. The way investors decide which companies to invest in is they invest in the companies that they fall in love with. So what happens is investors are, they're scanning the world for investment opportunities. And you would think, as you think about kind of investing in the stock market, that this is an analytic, data-driven, evidence-based, sort of process in how you pick the right entrepreneurs. But at the startup level, that's not true. You just don't have that data. You can't do that analysis. And so the reality is that as investors scan the world, they see these signals that cause their eyes to pop and their hearts to beat faster. And so you've got to figure out what it is about your company that's going to cause an investor to go, wow, that's interesting. We gotta follow up on that. So I tell entrepreneurs, you've got to figure out, what is it that's going to cause an investor to fall in love with you? Now, and we can talk all about that if you want. But first, the point is, you can't just have a business model canvas and a clever idea and a go-to-market strategy and, a couple of buddies from university on your team and say, okay, guys, now we have, we've got a pitch deck and let's go into that. Let's go talk to investors. How do we get in? You just can't do that. You've got to find something that separates you from the pack, that will then cause people to support your effort to go talk to investors. And so the uncommon wisdom is, first, find out what is your wow. Find out what's going to make an investor fall in love with you. Second, the common wisdom. The common wisdom is to get a warm introduction from someone who is credible. So, the reality in my world is if a bunch of entrepreneurs come to me unfiltered and I'm trying to filter them, I'm kind of looking for special things that will differentiate them from the crowd, but I'm trying to filter them out as quickly as I can. If a friend of mine says, hey, Bill, you got to look at these guys. I mean, these guys really have something special. Then I'm going to double down and look at it much more closely and give them the benefit of the doubt. Because, if Gary says these guys are special, there must be something here, even if maybe I'm not seeing it at first glance. So getting a credible person to make the introduction gives you the shot to get sort of through the noise filter and over to the side of having an investor say, hey, I want to take a meeting. I want to hear the whole pitch. I want you guys to give it your best shot. So, that's the common wisdom. The reality is that in this world today, probably, because of the explosion of accelerators, which is, I think, a great thing. So that has created this mesh network of ecosystems all over the planet that enable entrepreneurs to connect into all of these different ecosystems. So, you guys are already plugged into Silicon Valley, from Moscow. And so if you're a good entrepreneur, then you figure out how to work the network to find that person who is one degree of separation, who is either the investor or, the friend of the investor who is going to get me in the door, get me a shot at giving my pitch.
Yeah, one thing that I used to do was go through the portfolio of a VC and then connect with the founders and then ask for the founders to make an introduction after I've established a good rapport with the founders.
Right. And so the one degree of separation is, can be in all sorts of different ways, right? It can be through other entrepreneurs. It can be through lawyers or, bankers or accountants. And it can be through angel investors. It can be through consultants. It can be through ex-employees. I mean, there's all sorts of ways in. And certainly then, to exactly your point, what you want to do is you want to do the research to make sure that you're going after the right investors. Just because, this guy Bob knows a bunch of investors that are doing SaaS, it doesn't mean that those investors are the right people for me because I'm doing, health tech, whatever. So you got to do your research and figure out who are the right investors to go after. And instead of, a common mistake that lots and lots of entrepreneurs make is they get a list of investors. Somewhere they get a list of investors and they build a list. And it's easy enough to acquire, 120, emails or whatever, 500, I don't know what they do, but, and just blast the list. And that is not just a waste of time, it's actually doing you damage. I mean, if I get an email, that starts out to whom it may concern, it ain't going to concern me. So you've got to make sure then that you're going after the right investors and that you personalize your entree to investors. So most VCs will honestly tell you that it's almost entirely hopeless to send a cold email to them. We like to pride ourselves on the fact that it's not hopeless to send a cold email to us, but it's really hard. It's really hard. It is distressing. It is distressing that the reality in the VC world is overwhelmingly you're just telling people no, because you just don't have time to engage with that many entrepreneurs. So you've got to increase your odds at every level. At the level of the message is exciting, the connection is credible, and the entree is personalized to that very specific investor.
Yeah, and so once you do get through from a warm connection and they do agree, you do get the meeting, talk a little bit about how they can rock the pitch, or how they do well, or how they make your heart beat and others.
Yeah. So, I talk about this sort of from both angles. One angle is what not to do, right? And it's really unfortunate. There's so many examples of that than there are on the other side. but I'll start on the positive. Start on the positive in terms of things you need to do, right? So from the from the very beginning, the positioning that you want to take with an investor is one of strength, professionalism, high confidence, and a sort of peer relationship. So just whenever the approach of an entrepreneur is it can be either side of that. So there are some entrepreneurs whose approach is basically, we got this really great idea, but we need money. Can you give us money, please? Can you give us money? I mean, it just does not resonate, right? And the other side of that is the entrepreneur who says, I got this unicorn, and if you're lucky, I'll let you in, so I got lots of investors that want to talk to me, but if you want to talk to me, here's my Calendly, find a time on my calendar and I'll pitch to you, right? So that's pretty rare, but you get some of this entitlement side on the other side. But it's just a human thing. You want to deal with someone who is showing you respect, whom you can respect, who is showing high confidence, but is not arrogant, who can articulate clearly and in a way that is compelling what it is that's amazing about the company without sort of leading with the, we've developed a disruptive, curve-jumping, paradigm-shifting platform technology that's going to transform our $256 billion industry. And I mean, what the frick are you doing, right? So the flip side of that, is this team. They sent, they sent us this, the introductory email. It was, God, I wish I could remember it, but in more detail. But they were doing power electronics. And they had developed this semiconductor material that had a P-type and an N-type that had a band gap, benchmark performance that was 2.5 nanohertz, whatever. I mean, it was like IEEE Spectrum magazine submitted article. So there's a balance in between, right? In terms of making it clear what you're doing and then very quickly explaining what is so compelling about what you're doing. And so the best example of sort of rocking it, one of the best examples was actually I was at a workshop, and afterwards this woman comes up to me and says, "Bill, what if I told you that we can accelerate data analytics by a factor of 1x on the same hardware?" And I was kind of like, "What? Okay." And I looked at her and I blurted out sort of the first thing that came to mind, which was, "I'd say you're lying to me." Right? and she did not bat an eye. And she said, "Well, we can prove it. We showed Major League Baseball last year that we were able to outperform their big data analytics 120x. Whoa. So so boom, I grabbed her and dragged her into our office to meet with my partners. We pulled Intel in, a PhD friend of mine who was, deep into this technology. And, it was a wow. So if you can do something that's 100x better than the current state of the art, that's going to, start you off on the right foot. So, you know, generally, so the, you know, part of the point here is you want the investor, you know, and the partners or whatever to be excited about your company before you even start your pitch, you know, to the VCs. So there's got to be that wow that got you in the door in the first place, right? So then, okay, so then there you are. You know, we can go into the whole sort of.
Well, tell us a little bit about the Vietnam winners and how that you said last minute they really did incredible heart thumping pitch.
Yeah. So this is right. This is a huge lesson. This is a huge lesson for every entrepreneur that doesn't get talked about much. There are, you know, a few people who talk about this, but and I'm sure you coached all of your entrepreneurs in this. So there we are. You know, we had done this semifinal competition with 40, you know, companies from around the world. We narrowed it down to a final competition of 10 companies, and we're doing this. We've got 6 VCs on stage, this, you know, sort of huge venue, the Marriott Hotel in downtown San Francisco. We got 2,000 people in the audience, and these entrepreneurs are, you know, sort of lights and music and boom, 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 and they're coming out and wild applause, right? So it's a really, you know, really cool but intimidating venue. So we're, you know, we're going through the top 10 entrepreneurs, and it's, you know, so as we're going through it, it's pretty clear that the Canadian entrepreneur is the smoothest, best slide guy. You know, he's just, you know, he's got the slides and he's got the lingo and he's got the style and he's got the comfort, and he's, you know, the audience is soaking it up. The judges are soaking it up. And so it looks like, you know, this Canadian's going to walk away with it. God, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, should I? I don't know, but this other guy, this other company. You know, well, in any case, so the judges are just, you know, eating it up, and then so it's Q&A. It's Q&A after the presentation, and the judge says to, you know, it's out of the bag, the Canadian. The judge asks the Canadian, says, so now, you know, that's really interesting stuff, and congratulations on your progress. But who are you competing with directly when you're, you know, selling to enterprises? And the Canadian guy says, I don't have any competition. You know, I'm the only one who's doing this. And all of the judges look at each other and go, oh, my. I mean, it's like, oh, come on, you know. Sort of rule 1, I mean, you just, the entrepreneur lie number 1, I have no competition. Come on, get away from that. And I could just, I'm just looking at the judges, and I'm looking at this poor guy on stage, and I'm thinking, oh, did he blow it? Did he blow it? So then Abby Vin gets on stage. Abby Vin, one of the founders, is a woman named Cassie. So Cassie, you know, goes through the story of Abby Vin. Abby Vin is a logistics company in Vietnam, and it's a software company. And what they do is they provide both manufacturer logistics fleets as well as 3PL logistics companies with software to optimize the management of their fleets and the routes of their trucks and motorbikes or whatever. So it's a pretty straightforward business. You know, one of the founders was Google for a few years. Another founder was at the University of Cambridge. You know, so Cassie is sort of laying it out and, you know, sort of explaining how it is they got started, and they got Procter & Gamble as their anchor, you know, customer. And so they're growing rapidly, and there's a desperate need, and it's an open field. Great, you know, she finishes her slides, applause, applause, applause. Okay, Q&A period. And so one of the judges says, nice presentation, Cassie, really like it, but there's a lot of logistics software companies around, here in the United States and elsewhere in the world. I mean, what's so hard about what you're doing, and why can't somebody else come in and, and take the market? And Cassie, again, doesn't bat an eye, turns to the judges and says, yeah, but, they don't understand our market the way we understand our market. In spite of Google Maps, there are some streets you cannot send a truck down that street. You've got to send a motorbike. And there are other places that, just in spite of what Google Maps says, you don't want to send a truck in that path. So we've done is figured out how to optimize for our environment uniquely here in Vietnam. And the judges all look at each other and go, wow, that's pretty good. And so the point of the story is a $1 million prize was won and lost in the Q&A, not on the pitch. And hardly any entrepreneur actually spends time prepping for Q&A as opposed to focusing on their slides. And so the lesson for entrepreneurs is understand that almost certainly we investors are going to make our decision more on the basis of how you answer our questions than on the basis of your slide deck. Because the way you answer our questions is not about, for us, it's not about gathering data about your business, about your financials or whatever it is. It's not about the data collection about the business. It's data collection about you as an entrepreneur. And that's, you'll hear every VC all over the planet emphasize, in terms of their investment philosophy, we invest in teams, right? The most important thing is the team. And that's how we get data on your team. We don't read, right? But it's not about the resume. I mean, what we've learned is the resume is almost irrelevant in terms of the quality of the team. It's the dynamic of the team. That's what's key. So obviously when there's one person on stage, you're not seeing the whole dynamic, but even with one person on stage, the way that person talks about the company and the team and the way that they've grown the company reflects that personality of that founder and the dynamic of the team. Is the founder giving credit to her teammates? Is it a we kind of achievement, or is it an I kind of achievement, right? I mean, and it's a silly little Freudian slip, but so many entrepreneurs talk about my company. Well, when I started the company and when, we decided what to do with my company so many entrepreneurs have this sort of subconscious slip about the way they talk about the company that is a killer for investors. If it's your company, God bless you, go have it, right? But if you want us to be investors in this company, it can't be your company. It is our company. And it has got to be a team effort. It cannot be your baby. And you are not entitled to have a development experience on our nickel. So, a whole bunch of dynamics come out with relatively simple language in the way that you're talking about the company and your team.
So just kind of focusing on the team a little bit more, and especially to our global community. And I know that you have a global perspective. You've been working in Russia for a long time, your work with Pegasus, but is there a Silicon Valley bingo card that entrepreneurs need to be concerned about in building their team? Or are you saying that that's just a myth that we shouldn't be focusing on? Like, do we need the Stanford grad and the one exit guy and the hacker, the hustler, and the hipster? And does there need to be that perfect layout? Or is there room for?
Yeah. Well, it's, yeah, I mean, you can't, I mean, if you were to stack rank all the successful companies that came out of, that have come out of Silicon Valley, and you were to try to sort of deconstruct the composition of the founding teams, you'd have, many sigmas, right? In terms of distribution of teams. And so we struggle with this all the time. There is, a bingo card. The bingo card can go both ways. So it could be a good bingo or a bad bingo, right? We have everybody's got their scorecard, in terms of team. I try to look at the team with a dynamic scorecard. In other words, what you look at the company and you think about, all right, what are the critical success factors for this company? What's it going to take for this company to win? And so that then sort of lays out a sequence of challenges and milestones that the company's going to have to overcome and then hit, right? In terms of challenges and milestones. So, okay, what are the key challenges that they have to, address first and overcome first? And what's the key milestone they've got to get to? Now, is the group that's around the table right now the right group to hit that milestone? So depending on what the milestone is, the mix of the team is going to be different. There is no sort of universal, hipster, hacker, hustler kind of metric that applies to every company. I mean, so that's it's a somewhat useful, cute, clever, generic framework, right? And the point of that framework is you need some diversity and complementarity of skills, right? That's obvious. So, and in pretty much every single startup, you've got different, the challenges are such that no one person is going to have the skills to address all of the initial challenges. So, of course, you need different skill sets to address the different challenges. So, obviously, if you're a biopharma company, the challenges you need to overcome,
sure,
at the front end are going to be wildly different than if you're a consumer game company. And then, an enterprise software company is something else, and a clean tech company is something else. Excuse me. So what we try to do is we try to map the team requirements to the challenges of the company initially. And, so that's the sort of the resume spread aspect of looking at the team. But equally important, and probably more important than sort of the resume spread, is the team dynamic. And the fact that what we want to see is some high characteristics of the team. So we want to see a team that, I use the sort of parable of the optimist, the pessimist, and the engineer. So have you heard this joke? You've heard? Okay. So, for the audience, the optimist, the pessimist, and the engineer. The optimist, looks at the glass and says, "Hey, this glass is half full," and the pessimist looks at the same glass and says, "Oh, this glass is half empty." And the engineer looks at the same glass and says, "This glass was engineered to be twice as big as it needs to be." And so, I need a laugh track here. Okay, thank you. In any case, the point of the story is you have the same set of facts, but three different perspectives, right? And and so the point of different perspectives is it's not just about skills, it's not just about resume, it's about the team having the ability to look at the world from all these different angles so that you see everything you need to see. You see the best, the upside, the possibilities, the optimist. But you see the risks, the downside, the contingencies, the pessimist, oh crap, how do we keep this company going if we don't win that contract? How do we keep this going if we have a pandemic, right? Excuse me. But you also need this perspective, who is categorized as an engineer, but almost certainly, probably is not an engineer. The third perspective is someone on the team who sees the world for the way the world really is. And that's actually rare, because almost all of us have a tendency to be either optimistic or pessimistic. And some, for most of us, we're optimistic in some ways and pessimistic in other ways. But it's really rare to find someone who can just see the world, clear. And so that's really valuable, particularly sort of as the voice of the customer inside the organization, right? But when you get these different perspectives, it's great. It's rich in terms of, the ideation and the problem solving you can do with all these different perspectives. But the other problem you've got, the challenge you have as a team when you have different perspectives is, what's going to happen when you're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
You're going to wind up having different answers to solving the problem. So you're going to disagree. You're going to wind up disagreeing. And so you've got this disagreement around the table. And how do you deal with disagreement? Well, depending upon your personal character, you either try to shut it down because you hate disagreement, or you get personal. Say, Bob, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Where did you go to school? What did and you start getting personal, and that's both bad, right? So I'll tell you, when I was an entrepreneur, I thought the whole idea of entrepreneurship was I go get a bunch of buddies and we have this vision for the future, and we lock arms together and we march forward together toward this future, and we play ping pong and we drink beer and we give each other back rubs and we sing Kumbaya. And, I thought that was the cool thing about entrepreneurship, right? And then when we started to fight in meetings, when we started to, yell at each other in meetings, I thought, oh my God, this is bad. This is dysfunctional. Something is wrong. Fast forward, then, I become a VC, and we're trying to figure out this problem, this issue about teams, and sort of start looking at high performance teams. And it turns out, nobody taught me this. I don't know. Somebody must be teaching this somewhere, but it turns out on high performing teams, there is almost always a lot of conflict. And, so one of my companies, my fourth startup, actually, Microsoft, was one of the investors in my fourth startup. And so every quarter we would go up to Redmond and, meet with the Microsoft team and talk about how ways we could work together. And we were, in this conference room with these Microsoft people, and they would actually yell at each other in front of us. Going, oh my God, this is really bizarre. And then we hear about the guys at Intel, they yell at each other. And a friend of mine who was at Apple said, if we spent as much time battling the outside world as we do battling inside, we would be even more successful, right? So it turns out in high performing teams, there's actually a lot of conflict because you get really smart, really talented, high individuals into a building together, and inevitably they're going to disagree and they're not going to back down. And so the challenge, right? The challenge you have as an entrepreneur, as a founder, is how do you tap that conflict. And so there is a literature I discovered on a topic called constructive conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it has to do with marriage counseling.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, I'm going to
Yeah.
give people a chance to ask you some questions, but I want to ask you
okay.
one more question.
Yep.
You were in Silicon Valley in 1998, 99, 2008, and now we're in this COVID world. Just talk a little bit from the VC perspective, what entrepreneurs need to be thinking about, and what advice you have kind of pulling from the past, but also looking towards the future. We thought a lot about this and have offered advice on this topic. It is, as a lot of people have noted, this is very different than both the bubble and the global financial crisis, in a variety of ways. But the thing that so one of the things that's pretty different is that it's very asymmetric, and stunningly, we're seeing a number of portfolio companies that are actually thriving in this environment because they're right in the middle of something that is, has accelerated because of the crisis. And it's fairly invisible. It's a little bit obvious though, like logistics. So it turns out that thanks to this crisis, there's a massive amount of consumer goods, so-called fast-moving consumer goods that are being shifted from manufacturers' inventories and warehouses into people's closets and cupboards, right? So there's just been massive logistics shift, because of this. So one of our companies is 70% ahead of their year-to-date performance because they're in the logistics space. And then obviously there's some other things that are digital that have benefited. Interestingly, I was looking at some data the other day. In April, the number, this is stunning. The number, nobody will guess this one. The number one download on the Apple Store in April was, Derek, you want to guess? What was the number one download? In April?
In April.
I don't know. Candy
You'll
Crush?
never guess.
Yeah. Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. You would have thought something like that. The number one down, it's an app called Flow, FL, which helps women time cycle.
It's a Belarusian, that's a Belarus company.
I think you're right. Yes, I think that's right. So that's the number one. That was the number one download.
Wow.
And the number two download was Calm, the meditation, right? So in any case, there are companies that are benefiting from this, stay at home, shelter in place kind of thing. But that's either you're in that space or you're not. So what we're seeing is enterprise software is not getting whacked. Sort of obviously, at the far end over here, travel, hospitality, that stuff's getting whacked. That's just, that's really, really, really hard. In the middle, enterprise software, for the most part, enterprises, especially if it's SaaS, they're continuing to pay, and most enterprises are going to survive. I mean, SMEs, small companies are going to struggle, and a lot of them die. So we're seeing the sales cycle elongate in the middle. Revenues aren't as badly whacked as they are over in the sort of consumer physical part of the world. So if you're an entrepreneur, so it depends on where you are then in that spectrum, and then where you are in your stage. Are you pre-revenue? Are you early revenue? Are you scale up, right? So, one of our companies is in scale up mode, and they're consumer, and they got whacked, and so they just jumped on it. They were unbelievably proactive in terms of sort of, as it was, they knew the levers that drove their business. A great thing about this team was from day one, they were very sort of KPI driven, understanding the levers of their business. Where are all the levers, and understanding the economics of their business. So they had a sort of a deep understanding of the architecture of their economics. And so when the crisis hit, sort of they went back to this framework and said, where are the best levers that we can pull to reduce cash burn without hurting, revenues or destroying the team. So, you have to try to find that balance. So, they hived off a whole third-party outsource component of their business, and they just said, we're going to put that on hold. We're not going to do anything now until this thing changes. So sorry, no more cash flow that way. They did furlough a bunch of their employees, and then they also got very aggressive about people who were sort of on the edge in terms of whether they wanted to keep them. They were very aggressive about saying, if you're not critical to our success and we were sort of not loving you anyway, this is we're going to take this time to to decide who's on the bus, as Jim Collins used to say. So wherever you are on the spectrum, you have to do a 360 understanding of your business and figure out what are the levers you can pull. Now, that lever was a cost-cutting lever primarily. They also did some things financially, but the other question is, they shifted their marketing too. They shifted their marketing, which was critical. Some channels when the COVID crisis came, some channels pretty much shut down. Other channels, were more open. Obviously, the digital side of the world was just much more dynamic or open than the traditional advertising kind of side of the world. Now, a number of companies have tried to also pivot their business. We've gotten, and some will succeed. Obviously, at one extreme, Uber is going to have to focus on delivering food now, not on shuttling passengers. So if you've got a foot in a business that can take advantage of this dynamic, you're going to want to shift your focus over to that business. We've had too many companies, though, have told us, hey, we're now making masks, and there are, I don't know how many, God bless, but that's not an investable proposition. Shifting from packaging into making masks, or into personal protective products. So it's and then in the health tech side of things, we've gotten too many entrepreneurs who've said, we've pivoted in this COVID crisis to we're now developing an antibody test, or we're developing a DNA test, or we're developing something. And
what's funny, Bill, is Oleg just asked a question. He had developed an anti-coronavirus app, and he thought investors would be in the line standing to finance him, but in reality, it's the opposite.
Yeah,
and so
it's
kind
not
of
the
asked,
yeah.
There's just too much noise around COVID.
Yeah, it's just, the next entrepreneur who sends me an email saying, we've got the ultimate COVID solution. I mean, it's just like, I mean, it's just, there's just, because you've got hundreds of entrepreneurs around the planet who've had that bright idea, and they're all banging on the investor community, they're, God bless, if you can do it and execute and actually make it have an impact and make a difference, and as a result, that's great. But don't try to, you're not going to get through the funding cycle on a COVID play, and even if, PhDs at Stanford, med school, I mean, God bless them, but it's going to be tough for them to get through the investment cycle unless there's something that is, clearly differentiates them and is an unfair advantage that they're going to be able to sustain beyond COVID.
But are you looking for some acknowledgement of a post-COVID world?
Well, yeah.
In the plan?
Yeah, I mean, everybody we're talking to has had to recast their financials. So, some we've pushed them a little harder than others. Most everybody has sort of preemptively said, there's a whole pipeline of companies that we met, met last fall, last winter, that are in our pipeline for possible investment. As we continue conversations with the, short list of those guys, we are, we want to see that they have had an acknowledgement that things have shifted, that the financials they presented to us before are not going to stand up. There have been a couple who've said, no, we think, we're still, yeah, we're going to have a little slowdown now for a couple of quarters, but no, we're still going to, and I just don't believe it. You've got to be realistic about what this is going to mean. The good news, the good news for entrepreneurs is that venture investors, they're not day traders, right? I mean, it's not high frequency trading. It is, as I told my high frequency trading buddy, we low frequency trading. I mean, we're hanging on to this stuff for, in some case, Pandora was an 11-year overnight success, right? So it's not high frequency trading. So we're not investing today for, Q4 2020 results. We're investing today for 2025 results. So that's what we're looking for. And, there are some VCs that, sort of secretly, and some not so secretly, they sort of like the crisis. This is a little bit, strange, but, provocative. But they sort of like the crisis because they think it'll sort of clear out the underbrush in the industry. And it will, way back when, it was one obnoxious VC, made crack about getting rid of all the tourists, which I thought was obnoxious. But there are, there's a reality there. I mean, it's going to change the dynamic.
It's kind of like the Rahm Emanuel quote: "Never let a good crisis go to waste."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a little bit different in terms of what he was trying to do. But yes, there is the possibility, that a crisis can restructure the environment in a way that will have some positive aspects to it. And from a VC point of view, the positive aspect is going to be that there will be less noise, and that the valuations will be more realistic.
Yeah. So a couple of questions, I'm going to kind of group them And I know you have a hard stop in a few minutes, but there was a question about dislocated entrepreneurship. And I'm going to interpret that to mean, what do you think about entrepreneurs that are in Russia and getting investments from folks such as yourself? And then a second question I want to kind of join is, someone asked about a solo person company and getting investment and the possibilities. Can you maybe talk about those two together?
Sure.
And then we'll move to other questions.
Sure. Yeah. So the harsh reality is, for most investors, pretty much, overwhelming number of investors, you've got to have the key team here in order to get investment here. So we are, the good news for Russians is we love Russian development teams, right? Because development teams are really, really good. They're really, really cost effective. So we love Russian development teams, but we don't like investing in companies that are primarily in Russia in terms of the business. So, we just don't know Russia that well. We can't add value in Russia. So if you're over here and you want to scale up in the US, we know how to help companies scale in the US. And, the Pegasus team, they know how to help companies scale in Asia, in East Asia. So that's, where we can add value. So if you happen to have a development team in Russia and you set up your headquarters in the US, ideally Silicon Valley, then that can be a net positive, because right now, what everybody knows is, even with the COVID crisis, there is a concern about the ability to attract a good, stable development team here in the Valley. It's just really hard to build a strong, stable, loyal development team here in the Valley.
And what about a one-person company coming to you, even with an incredible deck? And
I mean, so so I'm a little bit different than a lot of VCs, in the sense that so many VCs, when they say, what's the number one factor that you're concerned about when investing in a company, the VC says it's team, right? It's team. And almost all those VCs, their attitude is they won't fund a one-person company. My attitude is, the number one factor in determining whether a company is fundable or interesting for getting our investment, the number one factor is, do they have a compelling value proposition? And so that's the core of a successful company. So now, then the question is, can we build a team around that compelling value proposition? So if there is a one-person founder at this point, that's a big question is, how far are we from having an alpha or beta product, or initial revenues, or pilots, or general release, whatever. So the question is, can we build a team around that compelling value proposition? That, of course, then raises the question of that one founder. Is that one founder truly a team builder, and he or she just hasn't been able to get the co-founders yet, or is there something about that one founder that has prevented that person from getting a team around them? So that's the assessment we're going to go through.
That's a great provocative statement, I would say. That's a great view. I have not heard that very often. Hey, but quick question, and this kind of goes into COVID, but what techniques can you recommend to leverage relationships with VCs and others without being able to physically meet? I mean, other than just Zoom calls, but what do you recommend in today's world?
Well, the the good news is before COVID, it would be, all the time I would get people saying, "Hey, Bill, how about we grab a cup of coffee and, catch up, or let me tell you about this," or whatever. And most VCs, we don't have time to grab a cup of coffee. I mean, it's just, you got to go somewhere, whatever, right? We don't have time. So the positive side of COVID is that it is easier for us now to interleave connections with entrepreneurs without sort of going through this hassle of, it'd be so much more powerful to be together over a cup of coffee than together over the phone or over Zoom. And so it's much easier for me to schedule a 15-minute Zoom than it is for me to schedule a 15-minute cup of coffee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're wondering, is this going to change things? Are we, even if we can go back to having a cup of coffee, are we going to change things to, these 15-minute Zoom calls? Because I can see your face, we can have a conversation, we can put a beginning and an end to it. You're having coffee, good, I mean, it's hard to, so it could be that this gets us all more comfortable with real contact. This is legit. This is legit. And because the chances of you're getting a VC to give you to take a cup of coffee meeting are pretty low. So it may be a positive. It may be a positive. We are, right now, we did 2 deals in the last few weeks, both of which we had met the teams before the shutdown. So I'm hoping to do a deal where we've never met the team personally. And it started out, even COVID, the team happens to be in Israel and in Germany. And we are loving this company, and we've never met them other than on Zoom, but we have spent a ton of time with these guys. We've spent a ton of time with these guys on Zoom. And so in a certain sense, this new framework benefits entrepreneurs who are not in Silicon Valley. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's better to not be in Silicon Valley, but I'm having these meetings with all these entrepreneurs, and some are in Berlin, and some are in Singapore, and some are in San Francisco, but between the 3 meetings, the geography really didn't make a difference.
Sure.
And that was sort of an interesting mindset. That now when it comes down to where's the domicile and where's the law, and we're going to want Delaware. I don't care if you're in San Francisco or Germany or Singapore, we're going to prefer Delaware. But that's a different topic. In terms of the interaction with the team,
great.
Zoom is surprisingly good.
Hey, this is something that someone asked, and you had touched on a little earlier, but maybe you expand on the most important personal qualities for a CEO and how you recommend they improve the qualities. And feel free to plug some of your stuff.
Well, so I have there's a sort of 2 sides to this. I got a whole shtick on leadership, and how we misunderstand what leadership is and what leadership means. And my main point is that founders should not structure their companies as if they are the leaders and then they're going to go hire a bunch of followers. That is a recipe for disaster. If you're building a company, you want to hire a team of leaders. And so sort of the clever inverted pyramid idea is the founders, are at the base of the team, and then they hire a bunch of leaders. Because if you don't hire a bunch of leaders and you become the bottleneck for all decision making, then you're never going to scale the company. So you want to be able to push leadership out to the edge, problem solving out to the edge. So that says, in terms of founders, we want to see people who love that idea. We want to see people who love the idea of building a team of leaders, and they should have vision, they should set agendas, they should set objectives and deliverable. I mean, there's all sorts of things that at a sort of process level, the founder CEO needs to be able to be really good at. But we want to see at the personality level this attitude of I don't have to control everything, I don't have to make all the decisions. I've got to get people to ask me, tell me everything all the time before they do anything. We see a lot of founders, and CEOs like that, and it just cramps the whole company. So we want to see that open, positive mindset in the CEO, but sort of in the CEO, there are a certain set of disciplines you've got to be good at. You've got to be good. You've got to be good at communication. You've got to be good at having a framework for understanding the goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics of the company. You've got to be able to keep that, sort of constantly in your mind. You have to understand the levers in your business. We want the CEO to have a deep understanding of the economics of their business and understand how it is that we make money, because that's what we're investing in. We don't want somebody who's sort of just a visionary and their attitude toward the numbers is, yeah, I can go hire some CFO Excel spreadsheet jockey to do the numbers, right? So there's that sort of competency. And then sort of deeper down, sort of the number one thing that really makes the difference is this this characteristic of what I call resilience, which is the ability to take a hit and bounce back, without cracking, because you're going to take a hit, you're going to take lots of hits. You're going to take lots of hits as a CEO. There are going to be lots of mistakes, and you've got to have the resilience to take those. So that means, a whole bunch of things come into resilience. A lot of people talk about passion. My concern is that passion can be faked. You can be excited about something until you're not excited, right? I mean, so that worries me when, we have these excited, passionate entrepreneurs. It's hard to test resilience when you're in that happy stage of growing a company. But it shows up in the way you respond to, pushback and questions and things like that. So there isn't, we know that a whole bunch of different personality types have been successful as entrepreneurs. We have our own icons. My own personal icon is Tim Westergren. Tim Westergren was one of the founders of Pandora. Had 3 near-death experiences that very, very, very few teams could have survived. But Tim was able to push through and keep that company alive when it should have died. It should have died, but he kept it alive. And and that was huge. And that was, his depth of conviction and commitment to the cause, and, his underlying resilience.
Wow. Hey, Bill, so I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I know that you're going to have to dart out in a minute or so, but how can people follow you and keep in touch with what's going on with Bill Reichert?
I've maxed out my LinkedIn connections. Shame on me. Reed never told me when we started out that that he was going to cap us at 30,000. So, but yeah, you can still follow me on LinkedIn, even though I've capped out my connections. And I do try to call that every once in a while to, let friends in. But yeah, I mean, I'm Bill Reichert on LinkedIn. I'm Bill Reichert on Twitter. I have, that's probably, following me on LinkedIn is probably the closest,
Great.
The best way to do it. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We
Yeah,
really
Bill, thanks a lot. We really appreciate your time and, appreciate your support of the ecosystem, the Russian-speaking ecosystem. You've been fantastic.
Well, I miss Moscow. I mean, I miss Russia. I just, God damn, thanks in part to you, Gary. I got over there a few times, and it just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that I haven't, been able to get over there, recently. And now it's we'll see when we can ever get over there again.
We'll get you over there, Bill. So
okay.
It's a thing, give stops a little bit and plateaus, will get you over to Russia. So the startup community is growing, thanks to you and your support over the years. We've been able to, grow it. And, I'm really pleased to see that, the community is sticking together and coming up with some really cool stuff.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
and I apologize to the participants. I wasn't able to look at what was in the chat room. Could I ask you guys a favor? If you could just grab the comments, if there was anything in there that I should see, I'd love to see what all the participants were talking about. And if there's anything that I should be following up on.
I will do it this way. I suggest our participants will ask the question in the community channel, and we will collect the question and pass it to you if you wouldn't mind. And at your convenience, you would give us answers back, and we'll share back with the community.
Great. All right.
Thank you. I will be out to California as soon as this thing stops, and let's get together and host for breakfast again.
Exactly. All right,
Thank you
guys.
very much again. Yeah,
okay.
We'll be happy to see you in Moscow. Just let us know.
Thank you, guys. Take care. All the best to everyone. All right.
Thank you, Bill.